Across America, a new sound is echoing. The sound of factories being built, not shuttered. From Arizona to Ohio, a manufacturing boom is underway, fueled by billions in investment. These new factories are set to produce electric vehicles, semiconductors, and green energy tech. This resurgence is no accident. It's driven by government policies like the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS and Science Act. These laws offer massive incentives for domestic manufacturing, aiming to rebuild supply chains and reduce reliance on foreign nations, especially China. Since 2021, over $200 billion has been announced for new EV and battery projects alone. Ford's Blue Oval City in Tennessee and Intel's megasite in Ohio are just the beginning. Even global giants like TSMC and Samsung are building advanced facilities in the U.S. There's a sense of momentum, a belief that American manufacturing is finally turning a corner. But beneath this optimism lies a critical vulnerability. These factories need a steady supply of raw materials, especially critical minerals. Without them, the entire multi-billion-dollar gamble could collapse. The foundation of this boom is fragile, resting on global supply chains that lead straight to America's strategic rivals. The question isn't just whether we can build the factories, but whether we can keep them running. The next chapter of America's industrial story hinges on what happens next. The stakes are high, and the clock is ticking. Can America secure the resources it needs to power its future? America's new factories depend on critical minerals: lithium, cobalt, nickel, and especially graphite. These minerals are the backbone of EV batteries and green tech. Without them, assembly lines grind to a halt and the factory boom fizzles. Graphite is the linchpin. It forms the anode in nearly every lithium-ion battery. The average EV battery contains over 100 pounds of graphite, by weight, its largest component. Yet the U.S. produces almost no natural graphite. In 2023, nearly all graphite used in America was imported. This creates a dangerous vulnerability. The entire EV industry relies on foreign sources for a material it can't do without. The U.S. Geological Survey lists graphite as a critical mineral, essential for economic and national security. But the problem goes beyond graphite. China dominates the processing of lithium, cobalt, and more. It's not just about mining, but refining and processing, where China holds immense leverage. This is a choke point in the global supply chain. As tensions rise, the risk of disruption grows. The American manufacturing boom is built on a foundation controlled by others. If the supply of these minerals is cut off, the dream of industrial renewal could vanish overnight. The U.S. must confront this hidden flaw before it's too late. The next move will determine whether the boom continues or collapses. The mineral crisis is real and the clock is ticking. Why is America so dependent on China for graphite? China invested for decades in mining and refining, producing battery-grade graphite at unbeatable prices. Lower labor costs, government subsidies, and lax environmental rules let China corner the market. Today, China produces over 70% of the world's natural graphite, and nearly 100% of the spherical graphite needed for EV batteries. Processing graphite is dirty and expensive, involving toxic chemicals and strict regulations in the West. China's dominance is no accident. It's the result of a deliberate long-term strategy. Now, as U.S. factories rise, they're fed by Chinese materials. The irony: policies meant to create American energy independence have deepened reliance on a strategic rival. In late 2023, China tightened its grip, requiring export permits for key types of graphite. The move sent shockwaves through U.S. industry, signaling China's willingness to weaponize its supply chain dominance. Prices surged, shipments stalled, and American automakers faced the real possibility of being cut off. The new rules targeted the high-purity graphite essential for EV batteries. Suddenly, long-term business plans were thrown into chaos. This wasn't just a trade spat. It was a direct response to U.S. restrictions on advanced tech exports to China. The message was clear: China can squeeze America's tech ambitions at will. New battery plants like Ford's Blue Oval City were left scrambling for alternatives. The entire EV supply chain was forced to ask, what's our plan B? For most, there wasn't one. The export controls exposed just how vulnerable America's industrial revival really is. The dragon had tightened its grip and U.S. industry was feeling the squeeze. The question now: how fast can America adapt? The clock is ticking and the stakes have never been higher. The next disruption could come at any moment. America's response will define its industrial future. The supply chain crisis isn't theoretical, it's hitting real companies and workers. Ford's $11 billion investment in new EV plants and thousands of jobs is threatened by graphite uncertainty. Tesla, despite efforts to secure supply, still relies on Chinese processed graphite. Any disruption could slow production and delay deliveries. The problem extends to the tech sector. Semiconductor giants like Intel and TSMC also depend on fragile global supply chains. The weaponization of graphite is a warning. Any critical material can become a pressure point. Supply chain instability is now a top concern for manufacturers. Companies must factor in the risk of shortages before building new factories. The optimism of the factory boom is being eroded by harsh geopolitical realities. The dream of American manufacturing renewal is colliding with the limits of global dependence. The next move will determine if the boom continues or stalls. The numbers are stark. America imported 100% of its graphite in 2023, with China as the dominant supplier. For battery-grade graphite, China's market share is nearly total. Demand is set to explode by 2035. Global need for graphite in EV batteries could grow 500%. A single new battery factory could require over 40,000 tons of graphite annually. Industry analysts warn of a looming global deficit even without export bans. New mines and processing plants aren't being built fast enough to meet demand. China's export controls add more risk and volatility to an already strained market. There's a fundamental mismatch between America's manufacturing ambitions and its access to raw materials. The U.S. is building factories for a future it may not have the materials to create. The numbers don't lie, the supply gap is real and growing. The U.S. is racing to secure its supply chain. The strategy boosts domestic mining, invest in new processing, and build alliances with friendly nations. The Department of Energy is funding projects like Sierra Resources plant in Louisiana, the first large-scale U.S. producer of battery anode material. Companies like Novonix and Innovion are developing synthetic graphite in Tennessee and Georgia. Friendshoring is key. The U.S. is partnering with Canada, Australia, and Brazil to diversify supply, but building new mines and processing plants takes years, sometimes a decade or more. Environmental reviews and local opposition slow progress. Chinese suppliers still have a cost advantage, making competition tough. The IRA offers incentives, but it will take time before new sources can replace China. The factories are rising now, but the materials to supply them are still years away. If the graphite crisis isn't solved, the consequences will be severe. EV battery costs will soar, and automakers will pass those costs to consumers. Higher prices could stall the clean energy transition and make US-made EVs less competitive. The factory boom, meant to create hundreds of thousands of jobs, could falter, leading to layoffs and broken promises. The economic shock would ripple far beyond the factory floor. But this is more than economics. It's national security. The 21st century will be defined by technology, and the nations that control critical minerals will lead. Relying on a rival for essential materials is a dangerous vulnerability. Building a secure domestic supply chain is a national imperative. America stands at a crossroads. The new factories are a symbol of ambition and of risk. The graphite crisis has exposed the flaw in the foundation. The race to fix it will shape the future of American jobs, families, and security. The outcome will define America's place in a rapidly changing world.